All right, well, good morning and welcome to Empowering Your Return, Navigating the Workforce with a Disability. Today you're going to learn what it looks like and how VR supports participants in their return to the workforce. We're also going to introduce you to some VR services for our participants, and lastly, you're going to hear some success stories. My name is Peter Shepis. I'm the Adult Programs Administrator in the Employment Programs Unit, which means I'm a subject matter expert on employment services, on-the-job training, self-employment, and rehabilitation-assisted technology. I've worked at VR for over 10 years in a variety of different positions, and I have a master's in clinical rehabilitation and mental health counseling. And this is my coworker, Veronica.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Veronica Ebwin. I work along with Peter in the Employment Programs Unit at Vocational Rehabilitation, or VR. I've been with the agency going on 13 years now, many of those years spent as a VR counselor up in the northeast part of the state. And for the past 5 years, I've been serving as the Mental Health Program Administrator, which means I work with all of our programs and services for individuals with mental health conditions. Before we dive into today's presentation, we do want to acknowledge that we are presenting in a rather large space today. So for that reason, we are going to ask that you hold all of your questions until the end of the presentation. What Peter and I will do is wait for you here at the bottom of the stage to take those questions individually after the presentation. And if you are watching this as a recording or watching this from home, please feel free to reach out to Peter or myself directly by phone or email. We're happy to take your questions and connect with you that way. I think we're on the next slide now. Okay. Oh. And with that, I will turn it over to Peter.
So who we are. VR is a work program, which means that all VR services are stated in law, are designed to prepare for, secure, retain, and regain employment that is consistent with the participants' unique strengths, resources, priorities, concerns, abilities, capabilities, interests, and informed choice to maximize career goals and achieve economic self-sufficiency. As a division, we are a federally state program that helps eligible individuals with physical or mental disabilities find, get, keep, and advance in a job. And in Florida, we have 7 areas throughout the state of Florida. They're broken up into counties. We have the Ombudsman office that's available for the whole state of Florida. And who we help? We help both people with disabilities, anyone age 14 and older, regardless of disability type, that may be referred to VR for services related to finding, getting, keeping, and advancing in a job. And our businesses in Florida looking to hire people with disabilities. So VR has a number of specialized units here at headquarters to meet the needs of our participants with disabilities and our business customers. We have pre-employment transition services, that's for students 14 to 21. We have general and supported self-employment services for adults that are 18 and older. We have self-employment and supported self-employment program that is a pathway for our participants who want to work for themselves. The Ticket to Work is available for our participants who are on SSI and SSDI. Deaf, Hard and Hearing, and Deaf Blind Services Unit does consulting on hearing aid devices, interpreting, and any kind of services related to hearing loss. The Independent Living Program, they work with the Centers for Independent Living throughout the state of Florida, And lastly, our business relations unit serves our business customers. Now I'm going to hand it over to Veronica, and she's going to talk a little bit about employment service, or eligibility and services.
Alrighty, thank you, Peter. So now that you have a better idea of who we are and what vocational rehabilitation is, we're going to talk more now about what VR does and how individuals with disabilities can access services. So the first step to getting involved with VR is submitting a referral form to let us know that you or someone you know is interested in receiving services. Now, anyone can refer an individual. Of course, an individual with a disability can refer themselves, but we also accept referrals from family members, friends, teachers, service providers. Anyone in this room can make a referral for themselves or somebody to VR. For students who receive services under an IEP through their school, typically the school will make the referral on behalf of the student. And that's just so that the school and VR can coordinate on the delivery of those pre-employment transition services that Peter mentioned earlier. However, a student or family doesn't have to wait on the school to submit a referral. They are also able to make a referral for themselves. Now, the best way to refer an individual or yourself is by completing the VR referral form, which is found on our website at www.rehabworks.org. That referral can be submitted to any of our 93 local offices throughout the state. The locations and contact information for each of those offices is also listed on the website. You can also call the local office if that's better for you than submitting a form to provide your referral information, or just walk into the office as well. Once our local staff receive the referral form, they will reach out to the individual within 3 business days to schedule an initial appointment for them to come in and learn more about the VR program and decide if it's the right fit for them. And really, that initial appointment is an opportunity for the individual to learn more about the VR program and begin building a rapport with their VR counselor. Now, in order to be eligible for services under the traditional VR program, a person must have a physical and/or mental disability that significantly interferes with their ability to work, and they must require VR services to get, keep, or advance in a job. After an individual applies for VR services, their assigned counselor will gather information such as medical records or other documentation of their disability to determine if the person meets these eligibility criteria. Now, VR also offers a specific set of services for students with disabilities known as pre-employment transition services. Those services involve exploring career options and basically equipping students with general work skills to be successful in the workplace. To qualify to receive those services, students must be between the ages of 14 and 21, enrolled in some sort of formal education program, and have a documented disability such as an IEP or 504 plan. For the purpose of today's presentation, we're going to be focused more so on the services to adults with disabilities or those who have exited the school system. However, if you are interested in learning more about our youth programs and services to students, I encourage you to check out our presentation later today at 5 o'clock in Celebration 5. That will go more in depth into the youth services. Now, for our individuals who receive Social Security, SSI or SSDI, they are considered what we call presumed eligible for VR services. What that means is they're basically considered automatically eligible for VR once we can determine and verify that they indeed receive SSI or SSDI. Now, VR may still gather records or conduct evaluations for the purpose of determining the scope of services to be provided, but regardless, individuals who receive SSI and SSD are still considered eligible for the program. On another note, we do recognize that many individuals who receive Social Security benefits are often very concerned about how working will impact their benefits. So for that reason, we offer what's called work incentive planning and assistance services, which provides an opportunity for participants to meet with a trained benefits specialist that can provide individualized information about how working will affect their individual benefits. And that's really so important for our participants so that they can make a truly informed decision when it comes to going back to work and understanding at what level they can work before their benefits are affected. Now, a question we sometimes get is, how much do VR services cost? So currently, VR does look at the income of eligible individuals to see if they must share in the cost of any VR services. That being said, there are many exemptions to financial participation. So for example, individuals who have no income or whose household income falls below a certain level are not required to pay for any VR service. Also, those who receive public benefits or those who receive Social Security, SSI, or SSDI benefits are not required to pay for any VR service. Additionally, many of the services that VR offers are free of charge no matter what your income is. So services like job placement, any of the evaluations that VR might undertake to determine someone's eligibility for the program, all of that can be provided free of charge no matter what the income is. It's when we start to get into services like transportation, medical treatment, maybe paying for college tuition, things of that nature, where we will look at the household income to see if the individual would need to contribute toward the cost. Now, VR counselors discuss financial participation with the person right at the start of the process, and all of that is agreed to up front before any services begin. So here's sort of a high-level overview of the entire VR process. It all begins with the referral to VR that we talked about earlier. From there, the individual will be contacted by the VR office to schedule an initial one-on-one appointment to learn more about the VR program. From there, the individual is given the opportunity to apply for services if they decide they'd like to move forward. Also, during that first appointment, typically the assigned VR counselor will sit down with the individuals to start getting to know them, getting to know their employment goals, their needs, their interests related to employment. From there, the counselor would begin gathering medical documentation and other records that may be necessary to determine if the individual is eligible for the program. VR is allowed up to 60 days to make a decision between the time that the person applies for services and the time that decision is made. I say up to 60 days because that is the maximum amount of time that VR is allowed under the law. However, a lot of times that decision can be made more quickly, and we like for it to be made more quickly. It just is going to depend on how quickly we can get all the information needed. So I like to recommend to folks, it's very helpful when they come in for their initial appointment to bring any records they may have about their disability. That's going to help the process to move faster. Assuming the person is eligible, from there they would work with their counselor to develop what we call an individualized plan for employment, or IPE. That's where the counselor and the participant will agree upon an employment goal that best suits the person and what services they may need to reach that employment goal. The process of developing the plan for employment can take up to 90 days. Again, 90 days is the maximum amount of time. A lot of times it can happen faster than that, depending on the extent of the discussion about the employment goal and the services needed. From there, the individual would receive the services on their plan, and we all hope eventually that's going to result in a job placement for them that matches the employment goal listed on their plan. From there, VR will continue to follow along with the individual on the job to make sure that it's working out, that they're satisfied and stable in that employment. That follow-along period can last anywhere from 90 to 180 days, maybe even a little bit longer, just to make sure the individual is truly satisfied and stable on that job before we look at successful case closure. Now, this is just a list of some examples of VR services. It's a pretty lengthy list, and it doesn't even include all of the services that VR can provide, but we wanted to just kind of give you an idea of some of the things that VR can offer. Some of the services listed here are provided directly by our VR counselors, our VR staff, and others, especially when we talk about job placement, are provided through our network of community rehabilitation providers that work along with our rehabilitation counselors. So the first service there is career counseling and guidance. That's really the foundation of the VR process and provided directly by our VR counselors. And it's very important, especially when it comes to individuals who are maybe entering the workforce for the first time, those who are maybe returning to the workforce after some period of being absent due to a disability or some other reason. Career counseling and guidance allows the participant to receive some guidance on where they might fit best in the workforce with their strengths and abilities. Additionally, VR is able to offer assistance with training and education after high school. More and more in VR, we're focused not just on helping individuals to find jobs, but helping them to find careers. So we're really wanting to help individuals to think about not just the short-term, but the long-term vision, helping them to get into jobs that will allow them to be independent, self-sufficient, and be able to advance in employment. And oftentimes, training and education play a part in that. So training and education could be college, it could be vocational and technical school, apprenticeships, certificate programs, things of that nature. Also, VR is able to offer assistance with job placement and job coaching, as well as on-the-job training. Peter's going to be talking a little bit more about those programs in a little bit. And for our individuals who need more intensive support to obtain and maintain employment, VR offers what's called supported employment that offers a little bit more intensive support both to obtain employment and stabilize the person on the job. Also, VR can offer medical and psychological assessment and time-limited medical or psychological treatment if that's needed to stabilize a person's disabilities so that they can be successful in employment. And then lastly, VR offers services that assist folks with the more practical aspects of employment, so things like developing a resume, helping to gather documentation you might need for employment, IDs, transcripts, things of that nature. And lastly, training on how to use transportation, whether it's public transportation, ride sharing, basically helping to make sure an individual can physically get to the job as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Peter to talk a little bit more about our on-the-job training program and employment services.
Well, thank you, Veronica. So let's look at on-the-job training, also known as OJT and employment services. OJT is defined as a written agreement for an employer to provide training for you to engage in productive work that provides knowledge or skills to perform the job. The employer will receive wage reimbursements for the job training program. The OJT can be used to meet your goal on your IPE. After the OJT training is done, we would hope that the employer would offer you a job, but if not, that's okay. The providers can help you with employment services. On the next slide, we're going to look a little further at the benefits of OJTs. So OJT is a time-limited service for skills acquisition that can be learned on the job. OJTs occur in integrative, community-based employment settings where most of the employees do not have a disability. The benefits of an OJT is that you can earn a salary, you can add to your resume, and you can make a professional connection. This service is perfect for someone who's been out of the workforce for a long time, Or maybe this is your first job. Now let's take a look at employment services. So employment services are services that are designed to assist with securing and maintaining integrated competitive employment. This service is necessary for the vocational goal, and it can vary according to your needs. Employment services include services that are both before and after job placement. The job must match your employment outcome on your IPE, and it has to be agreed upon by you and your counselor. Now let's go a little further on the next slide on employment services. Employment services before placement may include, but they're not limited to, activities such as developing job possibilities in the community with your provider by contacting potential employers, working on instruction on grooming, punctuality, attendance, and kind of any other job-related skills. And then after job placement, the provider can help you with instruction on employment-related responsibilities such as payroll deduction, insurance, retirement benefits, workplace safety, and job site coaching if needed. This service typically lasts 90 to 180 days after job placement, and at this point, you and your counselor will agree upon closing this case out successfully. This is a milestone and a celebration in your journey with VR, and you can always open your case up down the road if something comes up. Now, I want to hand it back over to Veronica, and she's going to talk about some success stories at VR.
All right, so before we wrap up for today, we wanted to leave you with a few success stories of some of our VR participants to really illustrate how VR services can help individuals return to the workforce. Each of these participants, I think you're going to see, has a unique story and a unique pathway in how they overcame some challenges related to employment. We tried to choose a variety of stories, so hopefully some of these may resonate with you. So the first story here is of a young man named Uriel. Uriel was referred to VR during his senior year of high school to have some assistance with kind of figuring out his next steps after high school. He first met with his VR counselor and his mother, and they ended up deciding to have him participate in those pre-employment transition services. As a result of participating in those services, they determined that Uriel was interested in the culinary field, so he decided to begin with that when he exited high school. He went to a culinary training program at a local technical college, and from there obtained a job at a pizza restaurant. And after some time of working on that job, he noticed it was very hectic on the job, a lot of stimulation, a lot of noise working in that environment. Uriel does have autism spectrum disorder and was just having a lot of challenges with that work environment. So he brought it to his VR counselor, and they went through what some options could be. They ended up deciding that he could try a different training program called Hands-On Education at Hyatt Hotel. That's a unique partnership and training program we have with the Hyatt Hotel chain, where our participants can receive training in different departments of the hotel to get skills for entering employment in the hospitality industry. So Uriel worked in the hotel kitchen at the Hyatt Hotel in Naples. Unfortunately, after some time of working in that training, Hurricane Ian came ashore. We might remember how devastating that hurricane was, especially for that region. So unfortunately, his training was put on hold, but Uriel persevered, and after a few months, the hotel was able to reopen. He returned to the training and completed that with flying colors. The hotel was actually so impressed with him that they ended up hiring him as a permanent employee. So he now works in the hotel kitchen at the Hyatt Hotel in Naples, and that's just a much better work environment, better fit for him. So you can see him pictured on the left here with the executive chef, the director of food and beverage at the Hyatt Hotel there, and on the right with one of his coworkers who also happens to be a graduate of the hands-on education program. This here is a story of another young man named Levon. Prior to coming to VR, Levon had been in prison for 14 years. And when he came out of prison, he knew he definitely didn't want to go back to prison, but he also didn't really know what he wanted to do with his life. So when he was released, he kind of bounced around to a lot of different jobs, retail, construction, variety of different things, but was really experiencing some depression and anxiety, kind of struggling to find his place. So a friend recommended that he try VR, so he came to meet with a VR counselor for assistance. She was able to get him connected with some therapy for his depression and anxiety, and they began talking about some careers, what might fit best for him. Levon ended up attending a commercial driving program and obtained his commercial driver's license. So he is now a professional truck driver and really has more of a career direction. Levon also says that working with VR and becoming employed also encouraged him in his personal life. He began taking up more positive activities like exercise, studying real estate, and really just has a more clear direction for his life now. And this here is one of our participants named Carla. Carla, unfortunately, was involved in a shooting incident, just a random act of violence on her way home from work one day, and as a result is paralyzed from the waist down. After going through many surgeries, medical treatments, Carla wanted to return to her job. Unfortunately, that was very difficult because she was working as a physical therapist and was no longer able to do some of the aspects of that job. So VR was able to work with her employer to negotiate some accommodations, and they were able to find a different role for Carla, teaching other physical therapists and physical therapy students at the clinic. So she was able to work in actually a hybrid role, working from home and working in the clinic. VR also worked with our rehabilitation technology team to modify a vehicle so that Carla could transport herself to and from work in her wheelchair. So Carla now has her sights set on getting into teaching with physical therapy and is an adjunct instructor actually at a school teaching doctor of physical therapy students. And for our last success story, I'm going to turn that back to Peter.
Thanks, Veronica. Wow, that looks like that is me there. Oh my. Okay, so like I told you earlier, I work for the Department of Education at VR. I'm a program administrator for adult services. I worked there for 10 years. I've been there for 10 years at VR. I have a master's in clinical rehabilitation and mental health counseling from West Virginia University. I'm a CWIC, which is a benefits, works with benefits counselor, and I'm a stroke survivor. So this is my story. So in September of 2022, I went to the hospital, and I was, I was dizzy. My eyes were blurry, and I went to the hospital, and I stayed there for a couple days. They couldn't figure out what was going on, so they sent me home. And my follow-up with my PCP, and my PCP is like, well, you look really ill. I think you need to go to a different hospital. And I was like, okay, let's go. So I went to this other hospital. I'm there for a whole day. They couldn't figure out what was going on. So they send me back to my PCP for another follow-up. So she said, you're kind of almost at that age to, have it's time to have a colonoscopy. So maybe that's, we should, schedule you to do that, because maybe that's what's going on here. And I was like, yeah, sure, because I don't want to go back to the hospitals. They don't know anything. So I was still feeling ill. I would still get dizzy and blurry. But then my arm started hurting, and now I scheduled for that colonoscopy. So I don't know how many people know about having a colonoscopy. They suck. They suck, and you got to do this prep. So the night before, I was going to start doing the prep. I went out to dinner with my family. I couldn't cut my food. And my wife was like, "Are you ready to go back to the hospital?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess so." So I went to the hospital. I'm there overnight. And guess what? They sent me home. They couldn't figure. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'm done with hospitals. I got to prep for this colonoscopy. So I'm prepping. And around 6 o'clock that night, the hospital calls me. The nurse says, "Sir, you have a really bad blood infection." And I'm like, "And you need to come in immediately." And I was like, "Well, ma'am, I've been prepping all day for this colonoscopy. I'm scheduled at 7 a.m. for this colonoscopy." And she's like, "Well," I was like, "Can you ask the doctor if I can just come in after?" She's like, "Well, let me call the doctor." She called the doctor. She called back. And the doctor, she said, "Well, the doctor said, that's fine, but listen, if you do not come in, you're going to die." So I call my doctor who's going to do the colonoscopy. He's like, it's your choice. I was like, "Yeah, let's just do the colonoscopy because I don't want to go through that again." And then right after the colonoscopy at 7 a.m., I went straight to the hospital, and I was admitted, and I was there for 3 weeks. During that time, they figured out that I was going to need to have heart surgery. That was what was causing, when I was the dizziness and the blurriness, and so. But they sent me home with a PICC line, and they said once the blood infection is taken care of, then we can, you can come back and have your heart surgery. So, on November 1, I had a stroke. I was put in a helicopter, and I went to Baptist Hospital in Jacksonville. And I stayed there until I could have my heart surgery. My stroke left me with mild anomic aphasia, a disorder that affects my communication. It impacts my speech, the way I write and understand things. On Thanksgiving Day 2022, I went home, and that's when my recovery started. December 2022, I started speech therapy at Brooks Rehabilitation for individual and group therapy. While attending the groups, they told me about the Brooks Brain Injury Clubhouse here in Jacksonville. And I was like, "Oh, I know about them. I used to go to meetings, before all this." And so I called up and I said, "Hey, do I qualify to go to the clubhouse?" And they're like, "Absolutely, come in." So in January 2022, I started attending the clubhouse, and next door was the aphasia center. And I always saw people kind of coming and going, but I really didn't know what it was. I had just had a stroke, and I'm not, still wasn't, things were not all great for me at that time. But people kept saying, "You would really benefit from going to the aphasia center." So I got approved in February of 2023 to start attending the Brooks Aphasia Center 2 days a week, and then 2 days a week I'd go for speech therapy, and then on Fridays I would go to the clubhouse. This is where I started to read and write again, and this is really where all the magic started happening, because in the groups at the Aphasia Center, we read books together, chapter by chapter, and then in the morning, we would have coffee chat, and I had a friend there. She was always playing on the phone Words with Friends on Facebook, and I was like, what is this? She's like, "Oh, I think it would be really good." And I was like, Like, all right, I tried it. And I was like, oh, I don't know, this is kind of dumb. I was like, but she kept encouraging me, and I kept doing it and doing it. And then I started winning. And I was like, wow, this is great. And then I kept encouraging other members to start going or playing Words with Friends. And now I do it all the time. And those are all my friends that were at the Aphasia Center. They're not just participants, they're my friends. And some of them I talk to all the time, or we text each other, or we just play games on Facebook, but it was a community that understood me, and I knew that I was not alone. I also, at Brooks, they do the adaptive sports on Fridays. Sometimes you go bowling or billiards, and that's a lot of fun too. And it's another community of people that of different type of disabilities. And so during that time, I opened up a case with VR, and in June of 2023, my neurologist cleared me to go back to work part-time, 5 hours a day, Monday through Thursday, and I had Fridays off, so I could still go to the Aphasia Center or the clubhouse. And in October of 2023, I increased my hours, 7 hours a day, Monday through Thursday, so I could still have Fridays off, because I really liked going to the Aphasia Center. But then in November of 2023, I went back to work full-time, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. So I could still go to doctor's appointments. I could still, with accommodations at work, they assisted me with tech so I could be successful at work. My VR counselor helped me with getting authorizations to pay for my speech therapy because my insurance would not pay. I even got a referral to the rehab engineer, and she evaluated my work environment to assist me with tech support, like a C-Pen, captioning on Teams meetings, larger font, spacing changes. I got a large monitor. Actually, I have 2 monitors now. I'm really happy about that. It makes such a difference. VR also helped me with getting a functional desk and chair so I can go up and down, and it was, really good on my back. I love it. And my stroke left me, my stroke was ironic. It left me with, I studied disability. I work at VR, making a career a reality for others. I never thought in a million years that I was the one who was going to need services, but I did. I learned that life can change you in a second. I'm a husband, a father, a friend, a professional with a new sense of belonging. As a peer advocate and survivor, I'm now part of the Brain Injury of Florida's advisory board. I'm very happy that I've got, it's weird. I'm happy that I've gone through this pathway so I can share with you a little bit of my story, share with you a little bit of my story of hope and gratitude. Thank you. And now we're going to take questions to the...
Yes. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. If you do have any questions, Peter and I will be here at the bottom of the stage. I see we also have a few team members that have arrived as well, so they will join us as well to help answer any questions you may have. Thank you so much for coming to join us today, and I hope you have a wonderful day here at the Family Cafe.